All right, it's been a long time since I've done an interview, but this is our 24th interview on the channel, and this is with Wavey. And so, a couple things before we start. First, the background. I asked if there's a background he liked, and he said he likes pink, he likes flowers, and he has a huge crush on Jisoo. So, this is what I found. I don't know who modern music stars are, but that's okay. It's not about me. Um, all right. So, the other thing I wanted to say before we started was I was thinking about who I wanted to interview, and every time I have talked to Wavy, he just drops some little thing of like, back in 2002, I got banned for trying to duplicate cards by seeing if we could purchase and pull out of the shop at the same time, or something like that. I don't remember the details. But every time there's some like fun, entertaining tidbit, usually about getting banned. And I have just enjoyed every conversation I've had with Wavy about TTA's past or things to do with TTA. And so I thought this could be a really fun interview. I haven't read through it because I wanted to come fresh, but I'm excited because I think there might be little fun nuggets of story, and he's always been great about that. The other thing I really like about Wavy and that makes him an interesting person for thinking historically, which obviously I like to do, is Wavy very clearly likes to compete with the best. And at least in his current incarnation, I can't speak to his past, but I suspect this was somewhat consistent. Like, he wants to play against the best players and see how he does. He doesn't get like upset if it goes badly. He wants to see what the best are doing. He wants to compete with that. He enjoys that. And I find that a really admirable trait. And I wish I had more of that myself. So, okay, let's get to the interview. How would you describe your triple triad play or style? Unfocused when trade is off, and careless when trade is on. I try to make the games rather tricky rather than going with safe moves, trying to trick opponents into making the wrong decision. Yeah, something I've noticed about Wavy's play in the few, games we have of him in the modern era, which is obviously not when he's playing most and not when he's most focused, is he tends to play moves that force combative action. Um, and like slightly unusual moves that are still kind of sound. I think like the first game I played against Wavy in the return, I think was for one of the Christmas GBs and Golden Boots, and I had a nice advantage due to having gotten a better random. And there were cards in 3, 6, and 9, and so it was looking like it was headed for some kind of L, but the L's looked pretty dangerous for him. I had the cards in 6 and 9, he had the card in 3, and it looked like he should probably go in 2, but he didn't have a setup in 2. He didn't have pressure against my cards in 6 and 9, and it really looked like it was going to be moving in my direction. And he found this move in 8, which was also going for an L, but going for an L locking in one of my cards, but giving him a lot more play, giving him a lot more pressure against the cards I had. And the game ended up headed for a draw because he had just enough play to hold the balance. And I think from what I've seen, that's kind of emblematic of his. He's not going for standard structural moves. So he's not going for like the crazy move in 1-4-7, but he's going for moves that give him a lot of activity in the position. There was some other tournament, and I'm forgetting, and I might be confusing him with someone else, but he basically came in with just unusable hands. Like he just came in with just massive weakness in one direction. And he ended up losing the game, but he made it a lot closer than it should have been. He found a lot more like combinative potential than looked like was there in that really bad hand. Who is your most interesting opponent? I loved the games I used to play with DMX on TTX. Games you don't see that often anymore. Trade all on open. It's lovely how you used to have so much spare time in life, and now it's all work, work, work. Quick aside here. I sent this interview out a while ago, and he took a while getting back because it kept being, this week is a real hectic, and I gotta work. And then I would remember in a month to bug him again, and he'd be like, you hit me on another hectic week. I mean, something like that. And and then he sent me it, and then I forgot about this for a while because, my bad. But yeah, we always went for a 7-minute time limit, and to be honest, those games would last well into the hour mark. And best of all, when one of us pulled an AA in a game, then it was tense and focused so hard. Yeah, that's gonna happen in trade. Who is your toughest opponent? Lord Lionheart. He used to bully me so hard on TTX with his unbeatable style. What formation or move type do you like more than other players do? This can be either for open or closed, or answer for both. In closed, I totally despise the move in 5 when having first turn. Otherwise, all spots are pretty equal, depends on what your hand looks like. If you have a weak side, don't make it worse. So there has been a recent move, and I'm not sure I have my finger on the pulse for this, but there has been a recent move, I think, of a bunch of closed players away from starters in 5. I haven't caught enough of Batsu. I'd be really curious what starters looked like throughout that tournament. Because I think there is still meta evolution happening. And obviously, there's only so many choices of starter types. So anytime a sort of meta evolution happens, it will be a recurrence of a prior meta. But it's always interesting to hear whether old players veer more towards, corners or sides or center starters. And I have this feeling that's probably wrong, but I feel like a bunch of the TTX players are a little more away from center starters. And the kind of middle era TTA players are like the most likely to be center starters. But I could be wrong on that. I'd be curious what other people think. If you think about like what opponents you face and what closed starters they tend to like, when did they start playing? If there's any patterns there, I would be very curious. What formation or move type do you like less than other players do? Oh, I already answered this. Sorry. Favorite way to meet a corner starter, a side starter, a center starter. Favorite way to meet a starter in the middle, a glass of rum to celebrate my winning chances. So, I think one of the benefits of a center starter is it doesn't commit you to anything. You often don't have the cards to justify a fully defended move. And unlike in open, you can't check your opponent's hand to make sure you have it defended. So it is sort of a way of saying, here's a card that I probably can play off fairly well. I might have some ideas about setups with it, I might have some wall rules with it, and it doesn't play a move which has a gaping weakness. Because most other moves will be like, well, if they have these cards and go for it, it's a problem. The thing is, the likelihood of them doing any specific type of reaction, unless you know they're a player who really, really likes that reaction, is pretty low. But my instinct is very much do the kind of least committal I can get out of this in the most situations, rather than actual kind of the more poker style analysis of what gives me the best chance in like how the game, like in the odds of how the game can go. Maybe 20% of the time I completely lose immediately, but if the other 80% I'm doing really well, this is still much better. And one downside of center starters that other moves don't have, and he mentioned this earlier when he mentioned don't, make a weak direction worse, is they can give your opponent the opportunity to direct the game. And in a few different ways, right? They can both direct which way some captures are oriented by playing in a corner, but they can also say side to side cards or up down cards are what's going to matter, and meet a center starter in 2 if they have a lot of up down cards and want to make the game up down. And so if you like controlling the directionality of the game, you're really going to like seeing 5 starters. Or if you like setting up combos, because you're going to be the one who gets to play initially on the diagonal and set up those combos. So there's a lot of reasons to like seeing 5 starters from your opponent. Corner start is very up and down. Sometimes if I have a feeling, I will just attack. Most of the time, they don't have the perfect card for taking it back anyway. At least when we were talking random. That's kind of all I play these days. Yeah, this is exactly where I was saying there's some risks of corners. Side starter is kind of opening for an opposite corner move, whichever corner looks best for my own hand. I think this is the standard in closed. Do you have a preferred starter type? Does that change between random and hand games? Does it change between open and closed? I can mostly talk about closed these days. I'm kind of opposite from everyone else. I really like going second. I like to attack and push them into needing to have that safe card to lock up when they take back. Yeah, like I was saying earlier, I think Wavey is a very combative player. A very I want cards on board that I can put pressure against, either by taking immediately and trying to say, but do you have the right recap? Or by setting up combo play against. Um, I find going first a little bit boring. It's just playing for protecting your own cards. It's more strategy and more mind games with going second. In open, it doesn't really matter because you see all cards anyway. Not much tricking there. How do you spend time during the opponent's move? Thinking specific lines, thinking about general things, spacing out. Either I spam click on the refresh button or I just do something else. It all depends on how invested I am in the game at that moment. Having music on and spam clicking refresh, that's when I'm the scariest to play against. Either way, I don't really think that much anymore when it comes to playing TT. I've been there and done that earlier in my years, but I've grown away from that now. What is your proudest triple triad moment? When I, after a few tries, managed to join AVL on TTX, it was my dream back then to be part of that clan. Close second is probably when I managed to become an elite in AVL. Wavey at AVL. Heart emoji. I always think of Wavey as a card club guy, because you see like CC Wavy, CC Ravy about a lot of old things. It's always nice to hear when people are attached to something that you didn't connect them to in your head. I think I'd like to do some more historical things about early clans. Obviously, I'm not knowledgeable on them, so it relies entirely on what I've heard. And what I will find when I say something I've heard from some person is someone else will go, no, that isn't right at all. And even worse, then the first person will go, and you misstated what I said anyway. So I got to try to be careful if and when I do that. But I do think in the initial kind of Brotherhood of Seed card club split. Um, and there were clans before that. I'm forgetting the name of the key clan that had the initial kind of divide with Brotherhood of Seed, but that the card club became the second on that kind of other side of the Great Divide. And then AVL, I think, was somewhere sort of in the middle. And yeah, I shouldn't talk about this too much because A, I'll get it wrong, but B, I do want to do a more in-depth project on this someday. Should Deli all be banned? Yes slash absolutely. Of course not. We all love him, or question mark, exclamation mark, question mark, exclamation mark, question mark, exclamation mark. Wavy, not on the Deli bandwagon. Bandwagon. Bandwagon? There's a joke there to be made, but I think it's a joke just for writing. All right. Should Elemental be abolished? Yes slash immediately. It can be okay. I wouldn't, for the love of God, ever make a game myself with it on. Yes, I told you, Wavy is a man of class. He's not going to go about playing elemental games. But sometimes it is fun to join and be part of that ugly combo slash elemental play that makes no sense. What clan will always have a place in your heart? AVL, from my early days, had most likely my best time on this game while being Wavy at AVL. Times did change, though, and most of the people I talked with disappeared. CC will always be in my heart as well, as we have had good as we ha- I can't read. We have some good times reviving the dead horse a few times on TTA, and that was so much fun, and even better that it always ended up as a shit show. So I think one problem with the questions I've set is I don't have enough that like explore the ways in past that it's a shit show, and that is because I'm not doing proper interviews. I'm sending out a questionnaire instead of like asking useful follow-up questions. But I should follow up on this and hopefully get back to you guys eventually about the ways in which things have ended up as a shit show. Player you think is most underrated? People that spend their times grinding the closed games here. People get credit when getting far in tournaments and having their names out there. Honestly, I think Turds is the best player on TTA. I don't know if he is really underrated, but I think he is much better than he gets credit for. One thing about Turds is he is very good at all rule sets because he likes thinking about TTA in an exploratory manner. And so I think like there's a big schism in general of like crediting kind of natural ability, like how quickly someone picks something up versus crediting how much work they put in to think about and to get better at something and the kind of effort side of it. And in general, I think we should admire the effort side because when we admire the natural ability side, we don't make ourselves any better at whatever we're trying to improve at. And when we admire the effort side, well, we too can try to put an effort and try to get better at things. And by celebrating that, it makes it easier for us to do so and feel better to do so. And yeah, there's a lot of writing about this, but I'm not saying Turds doesn't have a lot of natural ability because he obviously does. But the thing that has really consistently impressed me about Turds is how much joy he finds in thinking about Triple Triad and thinking about it across different rules and what might matter across different rules and how the game changes and having interest in exploring that, which means Turds is sadly not an elemental hater because he likes exploring things. You find this with a bunch of other players too, just this is the one in question here. And so he's someone who, from combo to non-combo rule sets to things with or without wall rules to open versus closed, Turds is just going to be a tremendous player across all formats because he has very thoughtfully worked his way through them. I think that's super cool. Who are your top 3 to 5 picks for GOAT? I will make this list mainly from the TTX days, like I already said before. I have a clear number 1 for these days. Let's go from 5th to 1st. 5th, Blade. 4th, Rob at AVL. These are names I hear a bit, but I don't know much about. 3rd, Solid Snake. I hear a little more. 2nd, DMX. I want to say DMX was part of the that super famous account, but I could be wrong. And 1, Lord Lionheart. When did you start playing, and what was your favorite era? In year 2000 on TTX, and that is where I had the most fun and made most of my friends from. It was a different time when I had more time to play and had more energy to make new friends. Favorite rule set. If you add trade diff or trade all, anything works. Have you met any other TT players in person? Lord Lionheart, Vision, CC Mickey, Spitfire, Freya, Vicky, Blizzard, Tezuka. Ooh, wow, that's a lot. Obviously, Blizzard and Tezuka are very good players nowadays. Um, Spitfire is the finalist of the very first tournament, I want to say. One sec, I can go make sure. My memory's not what it once was. Yeah, our very first finalist. Um, and now I lost where I was. Um, Vision, I hear about a bit. Mickey, I hear about a bunch. Freya, everyone only says really good stuff about. I'm not sure I know who Vicky is. I think that's the most people someone has met in person. I think Wavey is our record holder for most other players met in person, at least that I've interviewed. What is your biggest weakness as a player? You can evade the question if you think it's targetable. Tournament games. I just don't have enough focus and determination to get far. I just get bored, really. I play for fun, not to win anything seriously. And games without trade. There is no stake to lose, so why does it matter? So the secret for getting Wavy to come do really well in a tournament is we gotta have a trade all tournament. Is there another question I haven't asked you'd like to answer? Maybe why it takes so long for me to actually answer the questions from you. Sorry, I'm just getting old here. I screwed up just as much in getting this out way after he sent me his answers. So yeah, thanks so much for Wavy for doing this. Um, I would like to go find a quick story he told just to make sure I got it right. Let's see if we can get the details here. I'm gonna search our chat for ban. Um, I know this is like private messages, but I think this is fine. Um, so what I'm learning here is Spitfire was really, really good and then left for World of Warcraft. I think this happened a bunch. In my era, Demonic Avenger, I think, got mostly into World of Warcraft and stopped playing. But like he won a tournament before he went. Very promising player. Very fast, like quick grasp of positions. Sort of like a proto Akiyama type of player. Um, Yeah. All right. Well, this is a yes. Okay, I was right about DMX. Uh, that DMX was the scary one when it came to trade games on the Heart of God account, the famed like incredible number of wins, not many ties or losses. Lionheart and Black Bolt were also super dominant on it, but when it played trade, it was almost always DMX, and that was when it was just cleaning up cards from everyone. And that Beast Day eventually became part of that account as well, but was probably the weakest player on it, which is saying something because Beast Day is a pretty fantastic player, obviously, and the only player to have beaten Doc Evil. All right, I think that's all we'll get from exploring DMs and saying stuff like I really shouldn't read DMs and like make videos saying that people have messaged me, but I don't if anyone's ever said something that like remotely seems private or particularly personal. It's just little details that are nice to add. So yeah, thanks again to Wavy. Hopefully that was all right to include. And yeah, I'm gonna get another interview out soon as well with another player, also European. I guess that's doesn't really give much information, but yeah. And he's been around a long time, though perhaps not quite as long as Wavy. All right, then.